Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 14 of the Financial Time Travelers podcast, Business as Unusual.
Unusual.
It's unusual.
Wow.
It's not usual. It's
This could be an unusual podcast.
Could be. So loud.
I love that music. Who wrote that music?
Somebody turn the music down.
All right.
Trying to sleep here. This is a neighborhood. Okay? All right. Hey, everybody. Look at us. We're looking at you. Welcome to episode 14 of the Financial Time Travelers podcast.
At you.
Let's not get awkward now.
All right. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was getting awkward. So we're changing perspectives on the cameras so that we can have a more conversational perspective with you as a viewer, with us directly. We thought maybe we'd change it up, do a switch up.
And part of it was we were tired of looking at each other all the time. So we thought maybe looking at you would be better.
Yeah, I enjoy looking at you because
Okay.
I look at you and I think, look at all the things I have to look forward to when I get older. Look how well you've aged.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think it's positive. I think when you look at me, you think of all your failures.
No.
I could have done so much better. Look at all that potential in that skin and bones.
Yeah.
If only we fed him better.
It went by so fast.
That's so funny. Well, I think it's a big part, just before we get into this episode, is not getting romantic about your business model. For us, we have ideas on how the mics and the cameras are going to be set up, where the lights are going to be. It's a big production process. You probably see in the credits that Nick Boucher is putting this all together, so he's trying to do his best to make sure that we look good for
Our
you.
entire audio-video team.
Yes, exactly. And so it's important to not get tied down to things, even though you're used to the process, to try new things, get out of your comfort zone. And so that's what we're doing. We're not getting romantic about how we do things, but are staying the course, and we want to engage with the viewer as much as possible. That is the goal. It's not to have certain perspectives or, have these cameras in certain angles. The goal is to connect with you, so we're trying something new. Let us know what you think in the comment section.
All right. Okay, so today's title is Business as Usual. And what we want to do is we want to focus on...
You messed that up.
I did mess it up.
That's why you don't do the
Business
intros.
as unusual. Unusual. And what we're going to focus on, Niall and I were talking earlier today, and we're looking at all of the energy, all of the discontent, all of the emotion of the last year and a half going into tomorrow's presidential election. And the thought was, where is all that energy going to go after tomorrow? Because the presidential election is over. And what behavior changes are we going to see in people? And then as it brings down to how, as financial time travelers, how can we think about this, and how can we look at opportunities that might develop as a result of all of this emotion and all of this behavior changes that may or may not take place in the next year or two?
Right, it's got to be displaced somewhere.
Yes.
For every option, there's equal and opposite reaction.
That's right.
For every action, equal and opposite reaction.
That's
so
right.
We're curious, where is this energy that people have, and we'll probably post up a picture here of people going crazy. I mean, the protests on both sides. You had Bernie supporters that were very entrenched in his values and his belief system. Then you have the opposite bipolar opposite side of the spectrum. Polar opposite side, which is the Trump view. Although I think they do agree on some things. They're just how to accomplish them are completely different. And so where are all these people going to go after the election when it looks like we have our first lady? We're shooting this on Monday. It's coming out on Wednesday, guys. But it looks like Hillary's going to take it. But who are you betting on? Let's see who's going to win. Not who you want, but who do you think is going to win?
I've always thought that Hillary had the distinct advantage of being in the incumbent. And she has the better machine. The better team always wins. She had the better team. She has the history, good and bad, but she has the history of being able to pull this off. And so I've always thought that she had the better chance, simply not based on principles, not based on her positions, just simply based on her war machine. I think she was always going to be more capable in being able to pull that off.
Trump did a great job just handing it to her.
So part of what we want to talk about is that there's been this tremendous amount of discontent. People, think about it. They've taken their Saturdays, their evenings, and then during the day posting. There's been a lot of effort, a lot of
How
behavior.
many arguments have you seen on Facebook? I don't know about you,
Yeah.
but I mean, people are emotionally invested from their couch, let alone when they walk out.
So tomorrow it's all over, and what are they going to do with that? So what we did is we diagrammed, and you'll be seeing this in just a minute. We diagrammed this process because this is not brand new. In fact, you were talking about during President Kennedy, you know, we had a lot of riots, not necessarily riots, but we had large assemblies and protests. Exactly.
Especially anti-Vietnam.
Right,
I mean,
exactly. Well, that was World War II, and that was ending, and then of course was ended. But then we had going into Vietnam War. So there's a lot of that was going on.
Right.
And so
the hippie movement.
So the cycle has been very consistent. So let's talk about this cycle, and we're going to talk about emotions as it applies to behavior, and then we're going to bring it down into how the government has responded and regulatory, and then we'll go into more in that. So starting it off, the very top of the equation is a high level of apathy. So people don't care. They're just not paying attention. They don't get complete opposite of what we've been seeing for the last year and a half. Good luck getting anybody to come out to say anything. So there's absolutely no vested interest in any particular position.
I'm not even going to vote.
Right. I don't care.
Yeah.
Apathy. And so the emotion is apathy. The behavior, we already talked
Looking
about
at you, buddy.
Yeah. The behavior is no engagement. So they're not coming out on Saturdays. They're not tweeting. They're not Facebooking. They're not anything.
Right.
There's just no engagement.
Sleeping in.
Correct. And with low engagement, what that also develops is low accountability. So politicians and CEOs, business leaders, they know nobody's looking.
Right.
So no one's going to catch us, so we're going to do whatever we want.
Right.
So what do you think happens?
I think that they get greedy.
They get greedy. Politicians, they start continuing to feeding the machine of supporting other people.
Right.
Right. And
the altruism nature of their
pay to
work
play.
environment.
As
How
they call it.
about at the bigger sides, like right now, Congress, who make the big money decisions for America? They're basically our CFO of America. They're allowed to trade stock positions on the knowledge that they have acquired secretly from their classified information that they gain as a congressman or woman.
Yeah. And
so
and
how is that possible?
Yeah. And they passed a law earlier this year that lasted about 3 weeks. And then they repealed it that they couldn't do that.
No, that was a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And it lasted for 2 years. And they took it away because they said, this is impossible. You're going to lock us all up.
Right. So the cronyism of politicians doing whatever they want and being able to feed money wherever. You know, Solyndra was a company that lasted and then got a ton of money from the government and then went bankrupt. And end of that. And so the cronyism is developed because of the lack of accountability, the lack of engagement on people. So with that, of course, you have dysfunction. You have governments that are corrupt or not functioning as smoothly as they could,
or even close,
and money is being spent. And so then the cycle
money's
begins.
being spent, baby.
Yeah,
They're throwing dollars.
Yeah. And so then the cycle begins to decline. And what you see is that the low engagement, the low accountability results in the dysfunction. And as a result of more and more dysfunction, more and more regulations, more and more business-friendly type of environments. And of course, you brought up the point that big government favors big companies.
Yes.
So what does that do to small companies?
It makes it really hard for them to function, which is an ironic thing because people say, I'm fed up with these capitalists and their corporate fat cats and their big private jets and other keywords that presidents will say from the blue side. And so they vote for bigger regulation, more taxes on higher tax brackets, et cetera, et cetera. But studies show that when the government grows and taxes and regulation grow, that bigger businesses, the attrition that happens, because the smaller businesses can't survive in that ecosystem where they have to pay higher taxes, they have to pay more in healthcare costs, they have to pay more in et cetera, regulations. So what happens? Do they want to shut down their office or do they sell to the bigger company? They start selling, and then there's this great consolidation. Big companies get stronger and stronger, and it's a hard beast because on the opposite side of that table, we have capitalism reigning free, and let's say in the opposite side of that picture, there is, flat tax, let's say 15%. Let's go down to conservatives' dream. Flat tax, 15%, and as least amount of regulation as possible. And so what happens in that environment?
And small businesses are able to prosper.
They are. However, so are big, right? Because big businesses are allowed to prosper at that same rate,
right?
And they have bigger chips. They got the inside manufacturer.
Right.
They're doing it all in-house.
They have the lobbyist, right?
So it's not a duality. I feel like you have to have somebody who comes across the aisle and can work on both sides, because either one is just as bad as the other at their extremes.
That's right.
But in the middle, maybe there's something that we can work together on.
Typically, the answer always is typically moderate and in the middle. But in a situation like what you're talking about, is that you have governments functioning well. But right now, polarization and dysfunction is going to benefit the big companies, the well-connected people, the people with the lobbyists that can garner some of these dollars, the billions and trillions of dollars that are flowing out of Washington. So what happens is that you go from an apathetic, low-engaged environment of people to more and more dysfunction, more and more dissatisfaction, and it leads to where we are now, at the bottom of the cycle, high levels of engagement, high levels of anger on the emotional side. The behavior is in high engagement, high accountability, and governments and businesses start becoming more efficient because they're being held accountable. Their feet are held to the fire. What are you doing for me? And you have the, like you had mentioned, the Elizabeth Warrens and the Bernie Sanders and the Donald Trumps and many more factions that start. And one of the points that you brought up that I thought was excellent in our pre-cast conversation.
Oh, we're in the green room?
Yes, is how it's easier to identify with people, because when there's apathy, there's no identity. I mean, you can't do a shout out and everyone go, yes, and there they are. You got 10,000 people.
It's like a shout out to an apathetic crowd.
Yeah.
Is everybody having a good time?
Sort of, yeah. What?
I don't care.
But when you have high engagement and high levels of discontent, high levels of anger, you have people that are getting engaged.
And I think, before we move on, sorry, this shameless plug, episode 12, emotional biases. This is an astounding example of the negativity bias, where our brain is constantly wired to look for what is a threat as opposed to what is an opportunity, because it needs to protect itself. And so we're constantly kind of have those spider senses up, where if we read or see something negative, we're going to be drawn to it. And so with the media and the leaders, if they're smart, or unethical, but if they're smart, that's the cheap way to get you. That's the fast food route to getting millions of customers. You know, we can't say their names.
Now,
but it's the fast food of politics and attention.
And to finish out the conversation, so then we get to a point where changes are made. People are engaged. They're demanding change. They're not going to stay with the status quo, and they want to be able to see changes. They want to see improvements. And indeed, they do get that. They do get in changes. Politicians start paying attention. Companies start paying attention. Change starts to occur, and then guess what happens? People start becoming less involved because the change is done. And ironically, they think the change will probably be done forever, but that's not the case.
I'm set.
Is that slowly people become less engaged, and as businesses start going back to the same old, governments start going back to the same old, you reach to a point where we were, where there's high levels of apathy, high levels of low engagement. And so this cycle continues going on and on and on, and it has not changed for as long as we've looked into it, which is close to 100 years, going back to 1900 and then 1928, 1929.
What was it like growing up in that time period?
It was amazing. I know. I look much better.
You look
and
great.
So do you, too, because you were born in 1915. You know?
Oh, okay. I'm actually a vampire.
Yes. So
very friendly.
Where this leads to is we want to bring to one last point about governments, and that's in regards to regulations and the risk of having a company and the regulatory risk of having a company. Now, here in California, it's very expensive to have a company. There's a lot of factors that a lot of hoops you have to jump, a lot of taxes you have to pay, a lot of permits you have to file. There was an article a couple of years ago about a young girl that wanted to have a lemonade stand, a 6-year-old, and she was prohibited from having that lemonade stand because she didn't have all the business licenses, and then the E&O insurance, and then of course it was a drink, so she had to do with the FDA, and it was just a ridiculous situation, and they actually closed down her lemonade stand.
It makes me think of that story we told, I want to say in our first podcast before we even had video capabilities, about the lady with the florist in San Francisco.
Oh, yes.
On California Street.
Right.
How did she do that? I call it the tax in California. The way I look at it, and I stole this from one of your buddies, and I guess you could shout out David Arevalo.
Okay.
He's an awesome guy.
Yeah.
But he said it was a country club tax. That's how he views it. It's a country club tax.
Yeah.
You know, you pay extra amount of dollars to be able to live in this beautiful state and to enjoy this weather and have these amazing, you know, Sierra mountains and all this oceans away. And anyways, that's what I talked.
Homeowners expense, right?
But regulatory risk, and you know, this is something that we studied in college and have to study continually in finance.
Right.
It is a core understanding of economics and how they function. That we have regulatory risk, we have currency risk, everything that we quantify as advisors at Up Capital Management, not at Financial Time Traveler, but when we're managing individual wealth, is all quantified by risk, right? How much risk are we taking and what reward is measured for taking that risk?
Right.
And regulatory risk has been a huge factor. Now, we've also had monetary risk that's played another big factor into the market for the past 7 years on this bull market rally where the Fed has unprecedented added stuff in. But we have the same thing with regulatory. How will that affect your business if this decision by the government is made?
Right. Yeah. And that's a big factor. And so times of apathy and low engagement, governments can do whatever they want. And so we have a pipeline that's trying to get from Canada into the U.S.
Right.
They're sitting on a ton of oil. We need oil. We want oil. And more importantly, we want to sell oil because we are also swimming in natural gas. And so we want to be able to create a business. It's more economical to pipe the oil and the natural gas than it is to ship it and fly it. And we can go right through Canada, and that takes us into Alaska and brings us across the upper northern quadrant of the world. And yet there's this border that we can't get across. And so regulatory risk is a big factor. And so these are situations. And you were talking about, you're reading about North Dakota, about what's going on with a lot of the protests that are going on right now.
Yeah, and we start to see with this information technology taking over the world that we can communicate in real time with each other. So, for instance, people who are starting to realize if I vote this way, then I need to put my dollars behind it as well. So this guy made a video where he figured out...
I voted. Why didn't it change?
Yeah, exactly. So you can vote with your dollars. You know, it's more than just voting at the polling booth. But anyway, so he made a video where he found out exactly the 17 banks that were invested in this Dakota pipeline. NPR, or I'm sorry, democracynow.org had a cool interview where they outlined exactly who's funding it. And so he had an account with JP Morgan Chase as well as Wells Fargo. He made a video where he went to Wells Fargo, closed his account, went to JP Morgan Chase, closed his account, and
so
opened an account in the credit union. He didn't want to just
close his account. He wanted everybody to know that he's closing the account. Today's day and age of technology is so cool because you can make a bigger statement than just walking into the branch and say, "Where is so-and-so? I want to close my account right now."
This is going viral.
Yeah, we can show it to everybody.
It's very impressive.
Yeah.
And for him, in my personal finance mind, I'm thinking, oh man, that's so much history you just gave away from your bank. What if you're building credit? I hope you have a savings account that's had a longer term duration.
Right.
But anyways, and we're starting to see people take that energy and go other places with it, like social media, like their banking, such as maybe shopping at a mom and pop versus going to a larger box store like a Walmart or a Target, as they say in France.
Yeah. So what this means, what does this mean to you, and why are we talking about this? Because you're probably part of the 82% that are sick of this political process. Was it CBS or CN?
CBS News and the New York Times. They collaborated.
Yeah, so they came out this weekend with a poll, and 82% of respondents were disgusted with the presidential process and this particular election. So most likely you are also part of that 82%. In fact, the odds are that you are. And so why are we talking about this? Because as financial time travelers, we believe the quickest route to wealth is entrepreneurship. The ability, and it's entrepreneurial as intrapreneurial. And intrapreneurial is working within a big company, but you're taking leadership. You're taking some personal intrapreneurial, where you're working within a company and you're taking some leadership there. It's like a small business inside of a big business, and a lot of companies welcome that. They welcome thinkers. They welcome leaders. But yes,
sorry, I just noticed they even have degrees where you can study to get a master's in innovation for working inside of a company. So it's for corporate innovation, as opposed to small business innovation. So Northwestern University, I was just listening to John Lee Dumas's podcast, EO Fire, and he had an advertisement for it. Online course takes a year. Get your master's in innovation for corporate.
All right.
And so that's an entrepreneur. And then we have the entrepreneur.
And we don't want to alienate those, because a lot of times I find
don't
that
alien them out.
When you're talking about entrepreneurials, they're going, well, I don't really want to start my own business. I love where I work. I love my company. Right. It's a very big company. We don't want to alienate those people because they're just as important in the economy because they're taking leadership. And you look at opportunities that you can do in big companies that a lot of times you couldn't do on your own. But in either case, it's taking a personal, direct access to your accountability of what you can do. So the quickest route to wealth is, in our opinion, is entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial type of activities. Now, in a situation where you have an emotion of apathy and low engagement, as we mentioned earlier, it's hard to do a shout out and get anybody to respond because no one really cares. There's no real distinct opinion. There's not a bias that's been developed.
Yeah.
Now, when you go down to a time period we're in right now with high level of discontent and anger and a high level of amount of engagement, you do a shout out and you're going to get some responses, maybe good, maybe bad, but you're going to get some responses. And how that applies to businesses is you have an opportunity, greater opportunity, in our opinion, as an entrepreneur to identify business opportunities, a niche that you want to be in, and be able to see some growth. If people are disgusted with institutions and large governments, they're also probably going to be disgusted with large companies. And if you got a small shop, let's say a retail store, years ago they would walk right by you and go to Walmart because it's cheaper. They don't care. But now they're going to go, wait a minute. I know that guy. I like that store. I'm willing to pay a little bit more because I want to support the small businesses. I'm done with the big institutions. I'm done with big government.
I saw an interesting ad right now in the local news, and hopefully this ends tomorrow, but the local news and my mailbox. My goodness, my mailbox is full of so many vote yes or no on Proposition 1
so much for the paperless society, right?
My mailman came and gave it to me and apologized to me. He said, I'm sorry, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And hey, stealing my moves, baby. Anyways, so all these proposition and ads that happen on the local news, and I saw one recently where it was a hit piece on the other guy who was a new guy, and the guy who the incumbent was like, we're walking through. It was a great ad. He was walking through the community and he was going into random stores, and he's like, no one knows who that other person is. John Doe is
right.
I've been here. I've worked with these people. I'm shaking hands. Or shaking babies, kissing hands.
Yeah.
I've been doing the work, and people know me.
Shaking babies, kissing hands?
Yeah, they know me. And they don't know him.
Funny.
He's not out there. I didn't make it up. I couldn't take credit for it. But anyways, he it goes to show, and he is probably going to win because he does know. It's all about the relationships, all about EQ, self-awareness, understanding where you are. And I feel a lot of brands, and I make this mistake as well. I mean, I'll be very vulnerable in my flaws as a business owner, is that sometimes you create a brand and you set it up and you stand on a soapbox and you go, rejoice, I am open for business.
Right.
And nobody cares.
Right.
And so it's very important that as a business owner, especially in marketing, when we look at these new ways, these native ads where people are advertising on Instagram a picture with a product, or for instance on Facebook, how I could target a Donald Trump supporter and completely ignore and not spend a single dollar on a Bernie Sanders supporter, or vice versa. I could advertise towards a Bernie supporter and not. And so it's important to not only know, and you might have a business that isn't political and you think, well, how could I connect to these people who have nothing to do with my business?
Like something that's environmentally friendly, or you take the topics that these people are passionate about. And the key here is passion. We haven't used that word yet. Passion. They're engaged. They're discontent. They want to do something. They want to see changes. And you can now connect with people. The ability to be successful in a business is having customers. And if you don't have customers, you don't have sales. Now you have a very passionate community, a very passionate nation that have very distinct opinions, and they want to see some changes, and now you can connect with them.
And so it's thinking about, if someone who likes this, what else do they like? And building your brand around those things as well. If someone buys, let's say if I have, a skate shop, and an online retailer, let's say, you're running your business through Shopify. You're on the Facebook app, you're advertising. And you're advertising towards everybody who likes other skateboard companies. Well, why would you do that? Because you're going to lose to the big boys who have been there and they already own those people. They already have those relationships.
Right.
So what you need to do is think about people who not only like this, but what else do they like that your brand has? And then you can target the cross-interest groups, right? So maybe it's firefighters who also love golfing because they have days off, or fishing.
Right.
You can make a product that aims for that cross-pollination and target them exactly. And when you're looking at what's happening in society with apathy or support or outrage, whatever, you are able to connect to a group, and not necessarily in a way that you're trying to exploit their passions, but in a way that you identify, I feel this way as well. I know that this market would enjoy this, a supplemental piece, and I'm going to target them in a different way because we have that ability now. You didn't have that in the 90s. You didn't have that in the 60s when, you know, JFK was doing his thing, or you didn't have the ability to target the opposite group or your group in a marketing standpoint from a business. And so if you're rich in time, you'll be able to capitalize on the research that you're able to produce to make sure that you're targeting the right group. I think it's I'm so excited.
Yeah, no, this is a very exciting time. And so when we were talking about all this energy, all this effort, where are people going to go? What is their behavior? Where are they going to go from here? And how, as financial time travelers, can you capitalize on that and create an opportunity for yourself? And what's neat about this is that there are two distinct benefits to this. Number one, you're aligning your views with a group of people that agree with you. So you tend to have better relationships, you better engagement, and you have customers that stay with you. And so it works very well. And then secondly, you have long-term relationships, and sales are more dependable, and your growth is. So it's something that creates satisfaction, and you're working with people that you want to be able to be identifying with, and they identify with you. And that creates a great business opportunity. And so in the process, and this is a two-part series.
Two-part.
We didn't tell them this, but it's two parts.
Are we making it two-part right now?
No, we talked about it.
Nope.
There's a little more planning.
It to the grave.
Let's not reveal our hand entirely. So on the second part of this series, we're going to talk about actual businesses, actual business opportunities, and a process in which you will be able to start defining where's your niche that you can start focusing on. How do you define what might be an area that will do well for you, where you can potentially develop a business and see some growth, and identifying a core target audience that now their hands are tipped. They're out of their couch, out of their houses, off their couches. They're out rallying. They're out campaigning. They're actually out knocking on doors. People are now active. Now is a great time to start identifying with groups of people that you align with and be able to develop a business that you all agree on, and something that is a need, a product that is a want, and be able to expand that. One of the other points that I also want to share that you mentioned earlier is that this is an era, because of technology, that the barrier for entry is very low. I mean, you basically can put together a website, and we're going to talk about in our next series
I could form
how
a business.
to create.
I could form a business in 2 hours. With $1,000.
Yes, exactly.
A solid one.
And
with
we're
a
going to
marketing
talk about
campaign.
how to build the framework in our next episode.
I just need the time. I have zero time.
Yeah, but you were talking about rich in time, and maybe not rich in money.
If you're rich in, I would love to be rich in time right now.
Ooh. Well, I like rich in time and rich in money. So
I want them both,
Richard
baby.
Branson.
I want resource.
So in our next podcast, we're going to talk about the opportunities for small businesses. How to vet out the process for you to determine what is your niche, what is your particular skills and abilities that you can align with and develop. And then looking at people, are they looking for temporal happiness, which is fine, you know, something like going out to lunch or going to breakfast.
Temporal happinis.
Temporal.
I'm trying to get into their brain.
And then framework happiness, where you're helping them on a long-term basis. And is it inside a building or is it outside of it? Is it activities? Is it hobbies? Is it something that they need as a core help in their family and personal development?
Do you want to bust out that example of a hybrid, maybe, of a business that is giving you a temporary need and a long-term framework?
Yeah, this is a brilliant business model in our town. So we have
small town.
We have a small town. We have this nursery that is amazing. It's trees and ferns and waterfalls. They have a big koi pond. It's like walking into an oasis. And a couple of years ago, a chef, well-known chef or a very talented chef, approached the owner of the nursery and said, hey, you have a nursery and great ambiance, and I have the ability to create a great restaurant. Why don't we get together and create a restaurant within the nursery? I don't know if it's ever been done before. And so they launched a couple of years ago, actually not much after 2008, 2010. Probably not.
But around here it is.
And what's key here, and there's we're going to dive into in our next episode the key to their success, but we love going there. Not only is it fantastic food, it's a little bit more expensive, which we're going to talk about. When people are passionate, they'll pay more to achieve what they support. When they're apathetic, they'll walk right past your company and go to Walmart. They don't care. But when they're passionate, they'll pay more because they're making a statement with their money. They're voting with your money, like you said earlier. They'll
inconvenience themselves to go and get it.
Right. They'll drive across town.
Like Harold and Kumar getting the White Castle. They're going to get there.
Exactly.
You can't stop
so this merger of two business models that created one great business model is because after we eat a great lunch or a great breakfast, guess what we do? Well, we start walking around with our coffee or latte and start looking at plants and flowers and ferns, and it's a great opportunity for the two businesses to be symbiotic, and yet both of them are very good at what they're doing. Neither one is the cheapest. If I want to buy plants, cheaper at Home Depot. If I want to get an inexpensive breakfast, cheaper somewhere else.
I swear, and I don't want to burn Home Depot, but I swear every time I buy plants from Home Depot, I get mites.
Right.
Anyways,
well, don't buy it.
Another small fact, did you know that is a temporary happiness is, they're giving you that food.
Right.
Framework happiness, you're supporting a business you enjoy and appreciate.
And you're planting a tree, literally.
Right.
Right. We did. We bought, by the way, a 30-foot birch tree because we're doing a lot of landscaping, as you know. So this tree will be here for your grandkid, my grandkids, your kids, maybe your grandkids, who knows? I mean, so all in one deal, we were able to get a beautiful birch tree, and we had a great
Did you know, and I just read this the other day, that a Boston fern is the #1 highest. It converts carbon dioxide to oxygen. It's the best plant filter.
Right.
For like an indoor plant.
Right.
I didn't know that. I've always liked Boston ferns. We used to go hiking at Bear Mountain when we lived near the Pacific Beach. So since you're a certified financial planner, and I have you here, and millions of people are watching us, obviously. And we've talked about short-term and the entrepreneur. How should people manage their long-term accounts? So we're talking your 401k that you won't stop contributing to. If you are self-employed, you might have a Roth IRA or just a traditional IRA. Hopefully, no matter what, you're continuing to contribute to those accounts, because ultimately those are going to give you an increased benefit and security for your retirement when you get there. The government is not taking care of us anymore. The land of the pensions is gone. Social Security is getting dipped into left and right. They're changing their taxes. Anyways, so how do you think this election? Let's play out both scenarios.
Well, it doesn't really matter. There's still a lot of this passion that still is out there. There's going to be no matter.
But how would you invest your retirement account? So you're stuck to the stock market, the bond aggregates, and insured products and et cetera.
So the first step is you look at the candidate that wins and what they're going to support.
I would do that. Yes.
So both of them are going to have talked about infrastructure, So that's a lot of construction spending, construction materials. There's going to be a lot of roadways, a lot of asphalt that's going to be paved, and so you look at what their platform and campaign promises were. If Hillary, obviously, it's going to be healthcare is going to be a big factor, and today the ETF XLV, which is the healthcare ETF, exchange traded fund, was up to 2.5% today. So part of the answer to your question is that you look at where the money is going to flow, because keep in mind we still have a dysfunctional, corrupt government that's funding projects that we don't necessarily have any engagement, any involvement in. And so there's going to be hundreds of millions and billions of dollars flowing to projects that probably aren't in the best interest of the country. But so I would look at that, and then I would look at the opportunities.
I saw what you did there with that last sentence. With 2 projects, that might be the best benefit of this.
And so another way, and this is what's leading to our next episode, is investment strategies. But we start moving into an era that we should start seeing small and medium-sized businesses doing better than large businesses, because large businesses will start losing their edge because people are going to hold their politicians accountable, and they just want money flowing, out of our pockets into their pockets, and then they direct it to their pet projects.
So if Hillary wins do you think that you add a sliver, maybe 5% of your allocation into the healthcare? I mean, you can't do an ETF in a 401k plan.
Yeah, but they may have healthcare funds, specialty funds.
An index
you might
fund,
have
maybe?
that in your 401k. Yeah, so
that
you
might
look
not
at
be
that.
a bad idea.
And then small company mutual funds that are probably in your plan typically are going to be invested, some of it into pharmaceutical, biotech, innovation, technology will be awarded. Now we're not now. Keep in mind, we're not there yet. We're not at that point where the government has woken up and now we're going to start seeing a better, more efficient government. We're probably not at the bottom. We're probably going to see more of our tax dollars going out, less of it being used efficiently. We're not done yet.
And we cover this on the blog extensively on a daily basis.
But that's our next episode. So let me close out the topics we're going to cover in our next episode. So we're going to talk about investment strategy, so a deeper answer to your question. We're going to talk about how the opportunities, how to develop and identify your potential niche that you can work in for developing your own business. As we mentioned earlier, in our opinion, the quickest route to wealth is entrepreneurship.
The quickest.
The quickest route. The quickest. And then we'll look at identifying target markets, how to identify and tap into this passion that's out there, and then looking at, as we talked about, the next steps after that.
And then I'm going to give all my favorite tools and resources away for free.
You did promise that. You did talk about building a website for $1,000.
Yeah.
So we're going to.
That would be a cool little side project.
I'm going to hold you accountable to that. You're going to build a business.
You want to give me $1,000
for $1,000?
Okay, I'll do it.
All right.
So yeah, I'll show you guys exactly what tools I would use if I only had $1,000 and I wanted to start a business and I was very convicted on it.
Okay.
A little bit of that, it might be unfair because I have my own skills that I've worked on that are free.
All you have to do is YouTube it.
I'll tell you exactly what website, where to host it, how to advertise it.
So that might be this might be 3
spread
parts.
emails, the whole thing. I think it'll be really fun.
All right, good.
Great. We'll see you next time on the Financial Time Traveler podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, give us a review. If you're in the App Store right now, if you're on iOS, it would be great if we had a review. I know there's a lot of you who are subscribing and downloading. I see the numbers, but I don't see the reviews.
I see the numbers right now.
We got to spread the
numbers.
word.
Look at those numbers.
Look at the numbers. We got to spread the word, baby.
Okay.
So find us on Twitter. We got 12,000 followers plus there. We got just past 6,000 likes on Facebook.
There you go.
We got 30-something hundred people following us on Instagram. We're influencing.
Yeah, well, let's keep it going.
We're doing it, but we want to hear from you guys. All right? So let us know. Otherwise, we'll catch you next time on episode 15. This is episode 14 of Financial Time Travelers podcast.
Business as unusual.
You nailed it.
All right.
Nailed it.
Boom.
Wow. We gotta agree.
All right.
We can do this. Do the Nick snap. I think we should just pound it and you just watch it. Boom. All right. That's all you do. No, you gotta leave it on. You gotta leave it on.
This is some really neat stuff about time and how we make decisions.
And it's rooted in real science, which is why I brought up Stephen Hawking, because when I talk about time travel and psychological time travel, people look at me
incredible. And I feel like it stems from altruism and starting and just trying to be helpful for people. You're an amazing friend. I mean, you can't get me to come over and move somebody's sofa when they're moving. Right. You built a website to be able to delegate and be able to help people have their money in a faster time.